Hey guys, it's me. Sorry it's a little later than normal, but been a long day. We had our first appointment at Johns Hopkins. It went really, really well. We were really happy there. The hospital is seems very new. Everything is very nice and clean and well lit, and just a very good feeling hospital. Doctors and staff were all very nice. We were very pleased with all that. Um, like I had thought, it was basically the same appointment that we just had at Children's, just with a new team. They did all the same EKGs and echocardiograms and kind of did the same workup and had the same diagnosis that he has restrictive cardiomyopathy. Um, we are scheduled for the heart catheterization next Friday, the 22nd, and they believe that when the tests come back and over the weekend, that by Monday, the 25th, we will be on the heart transplant list. Um, so that's where we're at. They are going to be doing a bunch of genetic testing on Emerson, as well as looking at our other two kids. And if it looks like it's a genetic link, then they'll be testing Sarah and I as well. So I guess it's more gee whiz information, but I guess in the case of Bryn and Jason, if they are carriers but not active, or for even Emerson, knowing for their advanced, down the line future family planning, whether or not they need to be, uh, you know, taking that stuff into consideration or whatnot with their future kids. A lot of things to go over. So the heart transplant list, they break it down into four categories: 1A, 1B, 2, and 7. 1A is kind of the worst of the worst. Kids that are living in the hospital attached to mechanical heart pumps to keep them alive on a lot of medications. 1B is similar, but just not as bad. And 2 is kind of like where we are, where you kind of have a normal life. You're living at home, going about your daily business. And then 7 are people that are inactive, either they're sick or for whatever reasons aren't eligible for a heart transplant at that given time. So we are going to be class 2, and essentially it comes down to when a donor heart becomes available. They look at blood type, size, weight, all the various things to see if they're a good match, and the 1A have priority, then 1B, and then if nobody matches, then it goes down to the 2s. So it's not unheard of for us to just get a phone call one day and say, hey, we have a heart, it's time to rock and roll. So that being said, we have to kind of stay local for the foreseeable future. I was surprised. What I'd read on the internet was not true, actually. They don't put a actual restriction on you, like an hour away, 2 hours away. We can go as far as New York City, Ocean City, travel around a little bit. It's not as restrictive that way. When we do go for a heart transplant, we're going to be in the hospital for 3 to 4 weeks afterwards, just recovering. The stats I read, which he confirmed for me when I asked him, 68% of kids on the transplant list do receive a transplant. About 12% of the list dies while waiting for a transplant. Another 12%, I guess, when they look at the kids that were on the list, those 12% are still on the list and still waiting and still hopeful. And then 7% actually get better and don't require a heart transplant. So hopefully we can be one of the 7%. But if not, it's kind of a more than not scenario that you will at some point receive a heart transplant. Couple of fun factoids: a transplanted heart, on average, right now lives about or lasts for about 20 years. So if Emerson receives a heart in the next year, chances are when he's in his mid-20s, he's going to need another heart transplant. And then chances are when he's in his 50s, he will need a third heart transplant. And I guess that they've only been doing heart transplants, I guess, since the 1950s. Um, and the technology and the medicine is getting better and better and better, and so they're starting to see those averages increase. But it's not, we assumed, not ever having gone through it, that you get a heart transplant and you're kind of good the rest of your life, and that's not really the case. Let's see what else is there. That I did ask the doctor the very straightforward question: do we need to be worried about sudden death? There are lots of articles about that on the internet, and restrictive cardiomyopathy, just people having cardiac arrest and dropping over. And obviously I was just concerned that do I have to get a phone, every time my phone rings and it's my wife, that thought goes through my head: is this the phone call? And he said that that's not a concern of his right now. That when kids that have sudden death have kind of some arrhythmias going on in their heart. They have episodes of kind of passing out, and they've got other kind of complications that start popping up, and of which Emerson has none of those right now. So that's good. And so for those reasons, he's not concerned about a sudden death right now. Emerson is wearing a heart monitor for the next 24 hours to record every one of his heartbeats, just to see if he's normal for 24 hours or if he does have some arrhythmias at various points of the day. So we should get some more information on that. I think the only thing that was kind of concerning greatly out of the meeting was they seem very concerned that Emerson has this restrictive cardiomyopathy at age 3. Apparently, these things don't really manifest themselves and show up in kids until ages 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And so for it to show up in a 3-year-old, I think that they're alarmed or concerned that maybe it's very fast acting or very fast progressing, or that there's something more alarming about that. But for right now, he seems like he's doing fine. I explained last time that the atrium are bigger than the ventricles, and the ventricles aren't relaxing, so therefore the pressure on the atrium's increased, and the muscle wall is thinner in the atrium, so they're able to expand. When they showed us the kind of standard pictures of normal heart ultrasounds or echocardiograms, the atriums are typically about half the size of the ventricles. Emerson's is, you see his ventricles, which are normal and healthy size. His atriums are like double the size of his ventricles down here. So it's somewhat obvious to a layman that there's, obviously a problem. So, the time will come, I guess, when he will start to have some further complications, and will get moved from a class 2 to a 1B or a 1A. And they talked about some of those things that they had these little implant devices that they can implant that are basically mechanical pumps to keep the heart, moving blood throughout the body. And some of those things have to be external to the body, and so they have to be in the hospital. And some of those things can be internally implanted, and then they can come out of the hospital and be at home. But that, he said that we'll talk more about that down the line. But we signed all the paperwork and are basically getting ready to go on the list. So this heart cath is coming up the Friday the 22nd, and they're going to be doing a bunch of testing and what have you. But I think in the last video I mentioned that there was some hope that he might be one of the 10% that has some of these metabolic issues that are causing the RCM. As we learned today, that's not their expectation. They don't feel like he has any of those things. Those metabolic issues would have shown themselves by now. And the other thing is that those metabolic issues really are not good. Those diseases that can cause RCM are bad things that will, in their own course of time, end your life in a very short order. And in testing for all of those things, what they're really testing for is to verify that you are a good candidate for a heart transplant, because donor hearts are in short supply. And if you've got this terrible other disease and you're only going to live for another couple of years, then they don't feel you're a good candidate for a transplant. So we are not hoping for one of those things, and so and they don't expect that that's the case. Um, one more note: I know that everybody's going to be out there hoping and praying that Emerson gets a little heart transplant soon. Um, I understand the thought and appreciate the thoughts and the prayers. It did occur to me today as we were talking about it that to receive a heart transplant, it ultimately means that another family has experienced a tragedy. So it feels a little bit funny to me to hope and pray for a transplant when that means somebody else is going to be having a tragedy in their life. So if you're going to hope and pray for us for a heart transplant for Emerson, I would ask you to also just say a prayer for these families coming up that are going to have a tremendous tragedy in their life and could use some comfort and peace. So with that, I'll sign off. Please, by all means, um, let me know if you have any questions. Appreciate the wonderful response to the first video. I was kind of flattered, or not flattered, flabbergasted maybe. We only sent it out to 25, 30 people, and it's been viewed 250 times or something by now. Also, I was surprised I had a big response to the, I mentioned about, I'd be happy to share some things about my faith and whatnot. Had a lot of response asking for a video about that, which I did the next day and sent that out, and that's been apparently being circulated as well. People are enjoying that, so I appreciate your input and your feedback, and appreciate being able to help you as well. Have a great night, and talk to you soon. Bye.